For years my neighbor was just that, my neighbor. Nothing more, nothing less. A quiet guy, polite in passing. We didn't talk much, but when we did it was all pleasantries. Morning, nice weather, have a good one. And then, one day, he changed. It wasn't gradual like stress wearing someone down, it was sudden, like something had snapped inside him. The first sign was the broken beer bottle outside a neighbor's door. The shards of glass were scattered across the hallway like broken bones. I assumed it was an accident, but the next day, another neighbor's window was smashed. This time it was pretty clear, not an accident. Then came the noises. At all hours, shouting, things breaking, heavy stomping up and down the hallway. I'd hear him arguing, but never with anyone else. Just himself. Something had gotten into him, something dark and malevolent. The police were called, several times. The building owner got involved. All of us who had to live with him were desperate for a solution, a way out, but nothing changed. He was still here, and he was getting worse. And then, one night, he turned his attention to me. I was coming home late after a night out with friends. The garage was dimly lit, the flickering bulbs creating a creepy, unsettling atmosphere. I heard footsteps. They were slow and deliberate. It was weird because I knew who it was even before I saw him. Like some primal part of me recognized the danger in a completely intuitive way. I turned, and there he was. His face was flushed with rage, his eyes wild and unfocused. His pupils were huge black voids swallowing the whites of his eyes, his lips twisted into a sneer. "You think you're better than me?" he asked, his voice slurred but full of venom. I took a step back, heart hammering. "What are you talking about?" I asked him. He stepped closer. "You walk around with your nose in the air like you're special, like you're some kind of peacock. Fancy la-dee-da. But you're not." I forced a nervous chuckle. I wanted to placate him, to defuse this crazy ticking human time bomb. "I don't think I'm better than anyone," I said. But that didn't work. He just stood there, simmering, festering like an open wound. He didn't blink, didn't move. Just stared at me like he could see something beneath my skin, something he hated. Then he took another step forward. I didn't think. I just moved, slipping past him. I moved quickly up the stairs, putting as much distance between me and that lunatic as I possibly could, not stopping until I was inside my apartment with the door locked. I must have checked that lock 7 times that night, maybe more. After that, he made it clear. I was his new target. The paranoia set in fast. I kept my blinds shut, listened for every sound in the hallway, slept with my phone in my hand. The other neighbors were just as scared. His rage had spread to all of us. A cat went missing, and everyone knew who was to blame. Someone's door was graffitied in dripping black ink, slurs scrawled across the wood. The woman who lived there caught him on her doorbell camera, but she was too scared to press charges. We were all waiting for something worse to happen. We were all waiting for the human time bomb to explode. And we knew that when it happened, the results would likely be devastating. And then, one day, he was just gone. No warning, no moving trucks, just gone. We found out later that the building owner had been trying to evict him for months, ever since he stopped paying rent. But because of tenant laws, the process dragged on. His breakdown had started the moment he got that notice, the moment he knew he was losing everything. I got to admit that a part of me felt sorry for the guy when I heard he was having those problems. But I also knew that someone's personal difficulties are no justification for putting their neighbors through hell. When I realized he was gone, I felt relieved. We all did at first. But now, when I lay in bed at night, I think about the way he looked at me in that garage, the way he hated me. I wonder if he's still out there, and I wonder if one day he'll come back. I wonder if he'll come back for one final act of punishment. I've lived in this neighborhood for years, and if there's one thing you don't mess with, it's the HOA. They run this place like a well-oiled machine, strict rules, no exceptions. Many of the streets are too narrow for street parking, and if you leave your car where it doesn't belong, a tow truck will be there before you can even think about moving it. I don't know where they get their intel, but they always know. It's like they've got eyes everywhere. The owner of the house across from mine moved out and decided to rent out the property. I was mildly curious about the new tenant. I saw her moving in, a woman, mid-30s maybe, unloading boxes from her car. I didn't think much of it. People come and go. Then about a week later I heard the tow truck. It was late, maybe around midnight. The unmistakable beep 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 of the winch echoed through the quiet street. I looked out my window and saw her car being hooked up. She had parked right in front of her house. Rookie mistake. I watched as she ran outside yelling at the driver, but it was no use. Rules were rules. She begged and pleaded, wailed her heart out. But it didn't matter. Her car was gone within minutes. After that night, something shifted. The first time I felt it was at the mailbox. All the houses in our community share a central mail station near the playground. I was grabbing my mail when I saw her approaching. I smiled, ready to introduce myself. Then I saw the look in her eyes. Pure, burning hatred. It wasn't just a passing glare. She stared at me like she knew me, like she had a reason to hate me. I couldn't believe it. I didn't know this woman. That look chilled me to the bone. My best guess was that she thought I had something to do with her car getting towed. But I had nothing to do with any of that. I tried to shake it off. Maybe she was just having a bad day. But then it happened again. I was coming back from a walk one evening when I saw her sitting on her front porch. Her expression was unreadable, her posture rigid. I gave a polite wave and said, "Hey, how's it going?" Nothing, no smile, no nod, just a stare. Not just any stare, one filled with something dark, something unnatural. I hurried inside, but curiosity got the best of me. I peeked out my window. She was still there. Still staring. At my house. I closed the blinds and locked the door. That night I barely slept. Every little creak in the house made me jolt awake. I started second-guessing myself. Maybe I was imagining things. Maybe I was overreacting. But the feeling didn't go away. And then, one day, she was leaving. I pulled into my driveway after work and saw a moving truck in front of her house. Relief flooded me. I got out of my car, stretching my tense shoulders, ready to finally move past whatever weird energy had been lingering. Ready to turn the page and put all the darkness behind me. Ready for new beginnings and fresh starts. But the good vibes didn't last. Because as I was walking into my house, I caught a glimpse of her out of the corner of my eye. She was standing in her driveway, watching me. Her face was unreadable, but her eyes. I'd always felt like she was blaming me for something I didn't do, but now it felt 10 times worse. It was as if whatever sin she thought I was guilty of had magnified 1,000-fold, and she was furious about it. I went inside and locked the door, just like I had that first night. The good news is she was gone the next morning. I never found out why she moved. Maybe she had issues with the HOA. Maybe she just hated the neighborhood. But deep down, I know she blamed me for something. I don't know what, and I don't think I ever will. But sometimes late at night I remember her hatred, and I worry. Worry that one day she'll pay me a visit. And I worry that the next time she shows up, she won't just be staring. I never knew how much fear I had been living with until I left my marriage. I was raised to be the kind of wife who stuck with her husband through thick and thin. But that becomes a challenge when your husband is a raging alcoholic. Not the kind who just drank too much on weekends. The kind who let the liquor consume him, let it twist him into someone I barely recognized. He never actually laid a hand on me, but he came close so many times that I lost count. And that was enough. The day I moved out was the day I started breathing again. I found an apartment in a quiet building. just a handful of units, nothing fancy. It wasn't big, but it was mine. And most importantly, it was safe. I kept to myself, aside from the occasional small talk with neighbors in the hallway. One of them, the guy who lived directly across from me, was a little more visible than the others. Someone had mentioned he was an influencer, though I never looked him up. He seemed normal enough, just another person passing through the building exchanging polite hellos, but never anything more. And then, one night, everything changed. It was late, close to midnight. I had just finished meal prepping for the week, something I was trying to get into as part of my new healthier lifestyle. I was lying in bed, teetering on the edge of sleep when it happened. Boom, 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 a pounding on my door so loud it made my heart slam against my ribs. For a second I thought I imagined it. I thought maybe I had been falling asleep and drifted into a bad, messed up dream. But then, open the goddamn door! The voice was raw, slurred, filled with rage. I shot up, heart hammering. I wasn't sure what was happening, but I was sure it wasn't good. I grabbed my phone and checked the doorbell camera. What I saw made my stomach drop. It was my neighbor, and he was completely naked. His face was twisted in fury, his fists pounding against my door like he wanted to break it down. His eyes were wild, unfocused, like he wasn't even seeing the door. It was like he was in some kind of mad, demented trance, fueled by evil and darkness. I didn't hesitate. I ran to my nightstand, grabbed my pepper spray, and locked the bedroom door. Then I sprinted into the bathroom and locked that door too. 3 doors between us, 3 barriers. It didn't feel like enough. My hands were shaking as I dialed 911. The operator was calm, but I wasn't. "He's outside my door," I whispered. "He's pounding on it. He's naked. He's screaming." "Stay where you are," she said. "Officers are on their way." I sat there in the dark, curled up on the cold tile floor, clutching my pepper spray like a lifeline. My body was frozen, but my mind was racing. What if he gets in? I had no reason to believe my door would hold. But then, silence. A few minutes later I heard the distant wail of sirens. By the time the police arrived, he was still there, but he wasn't pounding anymore. He was pacing in circles, still nude, mumbling to himself. He looked lost. They took him away in handcuffs. In court, he claimed he was a sleepwalker. His girlfriend testified that this had happened before, that he sometimes got confused in his sleep, that he must have thought my apartment was his. Maybe that was true. Maybe he really did have a history of sleepwalking. Or maybe sleepwalking sounded a lot better in court than saying you were drunk, or high, or something worse. I don't know. What I do know is that I stood up for myself. I pressed charges. I was proud of myself for doing that. The old me would have been too scared to fight back. And after that night, he left the building for good. These days I try not to think about it too much. Ancient history, muddy water under the bridge. But some nights, when I'm lying in bed and the world is quiet, I remember the sound of his fists against my door. And I wonder, what if he had gotten in? But I push those thoughts to the back of my mind because I know I stood my ground. Sure, he was bigger than me and stronger than me, but he didn't win. In the end, when the going got rough, I did what I had to do. And I kept myself safe.